Welcome to the lands of science fiction stories. I wish you a pleasant listening experience.
The Galactic Federation University, a prestigious institution located on the sprawling orbital platform known as Epsilon Hub, stood as a shining beacon of interspecies cooperation. It was a place where beings from every corner of the galaxy could mingle, learn, and broaden their understanding of the universe. I, Corvalin, had always dreamed of attending. As a first-year student from the Draxorian homeworld, a species known for its advanced neurokinetic abilities, I believed this would be a chance to immerse myself in cultures unlike any I'd known. Little did I know, nothing could have prepared me for what was about to happen. It was orientation day, and I found myself among a group of wide-eyed alien students standing in the grand hall of the university. The excitement and nervousness in the air were palpable, mingling with the scent of various pheromones and the hum of dozens of alien species communication. My scaled skin twitched with anticipation as the university's dean, a Glenarian with 12 appendages and 6 eyes, welcomed us with a grandiose speech about unity and knowledge. "And here, you will experience the finest minds the galaxy has to offer," the dean's voice echoed, but I wasn't listening. My gaze had drifted to a group standing at the back of the room, humans. Exchange students, I had overheard, from Earth, a death world that had long been considered one of the most dangerous planets in the known universe. The sight of them sent a shiver down my spine. Humans. They looked like nothing I had expected. Tall, muscular, and imposing, their presence felt predatory. Their eyes flicked around the room like they were scanning for potential threats, while their casual posture suggested they were always ready for action. There were 3 of them. One, a towering male with broad shoulders and a scar running from his temple to his jawline, looked like he could lift an anti-gravity engine with one arm. The female beside him was equally intimidating, her sharp gaze cutting across the room like a vibroblade. The third, another male, had a grin on his face that was as disarming as it was unnerving. I found myself staring, my heart pounding in my chest. It wasn't fear, not exactly, but an instinctual unease. An understanding that these beings were different. My species prided itself on its peaceful ways, and yet, these humans appeared to revel in a latent violence, something raw and primal. I wasn't the only one who had noticed. Across the hall, I could see other students glancing nervously at the humans. The dean's voice broke through my thoughts. "And now, as a special treat, our human exchange students have generously offered to give us a demonstration of one of their most famous training exercises, focus training." The term meant nothing to me, but the word, training, drew curious whispers from the gathered crowd. A timid voice from the back, a gelatinous being from Zockner, trembled as it asked, "Focus training? Is that a meditation technique?" The human with the scar laughed, a deep, booming sound that seemed to reverberate off the walls. "Meditation? Nah, friend, this is about survival." Without further explanation, the humans began pulling equipment from a duffel bag, setting up strange devices in the middle of the hall. The scarred one, who introduced himself as Lieutenant Drake, held what appeared to be a small handheld cannon. His female companion, Sarah, smiled wickedly as she strapped on protective gear. The third, Logan, stood off to the side, casually cracking his knuckles as if this was a routine performance. The dean clapped his appendages together. "Students, please clear the area. Our human friends will demonstrate their exercise. Medical staff are standing by." Medical staff? That didn't sound reassuring. The air grew tense as we shuffled back, giving the human space. My tentacles twitched nervously. Beside me, a Aurelian student looked like they were about to faint. "This doesn't feel right," they whispered. The humans took their positions, and then, without any further warning, they began shooting at each other. The sound was deafening, explosions of light and noise filled the hall as the humans launched projectiles with terrifying speed and accuracy. The projectiles exploded on impact, scattering bright, glowing particles across the floor. But it wasn't just the sound, it was their movement. They were fast, unnaturally fast. They dodged, rolled, and leapt, firing at each other with an intensity that could only be described as combat-level ferocity. And they were laughing like this was the most fun they'd had all day. I could feel my skin pale as the sheer chaos of the scene unfolded. One of the other students muttered something about this being insane, and I couldn't help but agree. Insanity barely scratched the surface. The way they moved, how they anticipated each other's shots, the way they seemed to dance around death, it was mesmerizing and horrifying all at once. The exercise went on for what felt like an eternity, but was probably only a few minutes. When it finally ended, the humans stood there, covered in glowing residue, breathing heavily but smiling like they just had the best workout of their lives. The dean hesitated, clearly unsure how to respond. "Thank you for that demonstration. Perhaps next time, something a little less lethal?" Lieutenant Drake shrugged. "That was the safe version, sir. You should see what real combat looks like." I swallowed hard. If this was their safe version, what in the void was their real combat? The human students casually began packing away their equipment, leaving the rest of us in stunned silence. For them, this was normal. For the rest of us, it felt like we had just survived an ordeal we never signed up for. As they walked past me, I caught a glint in Sarah's eye. She looked me up and down, her lips curling into a smirk. "You should join us next time, Draxorian. We could teach you a thing or two about focus." I didn't respond. My mind was still reeling. Humans weren't just different. They were on a level of existence I hadn't even known was possible. As I lay there on the cool metal floor, my body still trembling from the intensity of the firewalk, a strange realization crept over me. This wasn't just about physical endurance. It wasn't even about the sheer madness of throwing oneself into impossible scenarios like humans did. It was about something deeper, something fundamental to who they were as a species. I pulled myself to my feet, wobbling slightly as the last remnants of the burning sensation faded from my legs. Drake, Logan, and Sarah stood before me, each of them radiating that unmistakable human intensity. It was as if danger, chaos, and suffering had become their way of finding clarity, a truth that only they could fully understand. "You've done well," Drake said, his voice carrying a note of approval that felt strange coming from someone who had put me through such a grueling experience. "But there's one last test. One that we all go through." Sarah crossed her arms, that ever-present smirk playing at the corners of her lips. "It's what separates those who can thrive in chaos from those who just survive it." I could feel my heart rate spike. "What's this final test?" Logan pushed himself off the bulkhead and walked over to a large console on the far wall. "We call it the Abyss," he said, punching in a series of codes. The floor of the arena began to shift once again, revealing a massive platform that rose from the center. Around it, tall metallic walls erected themselves, forming a perfect circle. "It's simple," Logan continued, his voice cool and detached. "You step inside and we crank up the pressure. You'll face disorienting visuals, simulated environments, sensory overload, all while maintaining focus. The objective? Don't lose yourself." The platform hummed ominously, casting an eerie glow across the room. I could feel my stomach churn just looking at it. "This is standard training?" I asked, trying to keep the fear out of my voice. "For us, it is," Drake replied. "It's how we train to survive the impossible. You can back out now if you want, but if you go in, you finish it." Backing out. A part of me screamed to leave, to run back to the safety of my dorm and never think about this again. But another part, a part that had been growing steadily louder since I first witnessed the humans' insane behavior, wanted to understand. Needed to. I nodded, stepping forward. "I'll do it." The three humans exchanged glances, then Drake nodded once. "Good. Get in the ring." I climbed onto the platform, my legs still shaky but steady enough to keep me upright. The walls around me towered, enclosing me in what felt like a metallic prison. Logan's voice echoed from the console. "Remember, the point isn't to win. It's to keep your focus. No matter what happens, don't lose sight of yourself." Before I could respond, the lights in the arena dimmed, plunging me into semi-darkness. My heart pounded in my chest, the faint hum of the machinery growing louder as the test began. At first, nothing happened. I stood there, waiting for something, anything, to occur. But then, without warning, the world around me changed. The walls shifted, disappearing into a vast, endless black void. The platform beneath my feet vanished, and suddenly, I was falling. I reached out instinctively, but there was nothing to grab hold of, just an abyss stretching in every direction. My stomach lurched as I plummeted, my mind racing in a frenzy of panic. Focus. Control. I closed my eyes, forcing myself to remember what Drake had said. This was a simulation, a test designed to break my concentration. The fear was real, but the danger wasn't. I had to keep my mind sharp, no matter how real it felt. Just as I started to regain control, the world shifted again. This time, I was standing in the middle of a battlefield, surrounded by smoke, fire, and the sounds of war. Alien soldiers, creatures I didn't recognize, charged at me from every direction, their weapons raised. I could feel the heat of their blasts, smell the burning metal, hear the screams of the dying. Focus. I knew it wasn't real, but the sensory overload was overwhelming. My instincts screamed at me to run, to fight, to survive. But I had no weapon, no means of defending myself. All I had was my mind. The one thing they couldn't take from me. I dropped to the ground, curling into a ball as the battle raged on around me. The simulated soldiers fired at each other, the heat from the explosions searing my skin. But I stayed still, forcing myself to block out the chaos. This was a test. It wasn't real. Minutes passed, maybe hours, I couldn't tell. But slowly, the sounds began to fade. The heat dissipated. The screams died down. When I opened my eyes again, I was back in the metallic ring, standing on the platform. The world around me was silent. I had passed. The walls lowered, and the humans approached, their expressions unreadable. "You made it," Logan said, nodding with a hint of admiration. "Not bad for your first time." Sarah leaned in, her smirk softer now, almost approving. "You didn't lose it. That's more than most can say." Drake extended his hand to me, a gesture that felt more symbolic than anything. "You've seen what it's like now. The chaos, the madness. You kept your focus. That's what it means to be strong in the face of danger." I hesitated for a moment, then took his hand. His grip was firm, solid, like an anchor in the storm of insanity I had just endured. As he pulled me to my feet, I realized something. The humans weren't crazy. They weren't reckless or suicidal. They were survivors, honed by a world that demanded they evolve to face unimaginable horrors. They had embraced the madness because it was the only way they knew how to thrive. And now, in a strange way, I had too. As I left the arena, my mind still reeling from the experience, I knew that my perspective had changed. The Galactic Federation University had brought together the brightest minds from across the cosmos, but none could match the raw, primal strength of the humans. They had taught me that survival wasn't about avoiding danger, it was about confronting it head-on, about finding clarity in the midst of chaos. I wasn't sure if I'd ever be the same again. But one thing was certain. I understood now, in a way I never could have before, what it meant to be a Deathworlder. And for better or worse, I had earned their respect. As the door to my dorm slid open, Jax looked up from his hollow screen, his wings twitching with curiosity. "So," he said, "how did it go?" I stared at him for a moment, my mind still processing everything I had just been through. Then, with a small, tired smile, I said, "I think I just learned how to survive the impossible." Jax blinked, clearly unsure how to respond. "Well, yeah, that's good, I guess." I collapsed onto my bunk, my body aching but my mind sharper than it had ever been. "Yeah," I muttered, closing my eyes. "Good." And as I drifted off to sleep, I couldn't help but wonder what other insane challenges the humans had in store. The end. It took several hours after the focus training demonstration for my nerves to settle. The idea of humans using live ammunition during training exercises baffled me. I had read about Deathworlders in the archives, beings from planets so hostile that survival was a daily struggle, but I had never imagined this kind of recklessness could be normal behavior. I found myself standing in front of my dorm's viewport, gazing out at the vast expanse of stars. My mind kept circling back to the humans. What kind of existence could lead to such behavior? I was lost in thought when the door slid open with a soft hiss, and my roommate, Jax, a Relithian with translucent wings and a talent for making me question every life choice, fluttered in. "Still thinking about them, huh?" Jax's voice was a mix of curiosity and amusement. I turned to him, my scaled skin rippling with unease. How could I not? Did you see how they were acting? They were laughing while trying to kill each other. Jax landed on the edge of his bunk, his wings folding neatly behind him. It's called Deathworlder mentality, core. I've read about it in the sociocultural archives. Humans thrive on chaos. It's how they evolved. Fighting, struggling, it's all part of their culture. I shook my head. But why? What possible benefit could there be in training with such real danger? Jack shrugged. Survival, I guess. And maybe a bit of thrill-seeking. You have to admit, they seem to be enjoying themselves. Enjoying themselves. The words echoed in my mind. The humans had appeared exhilarated, as if the threat of injury, or worse, was just another part of their fun. My species, the Draxorians, valued calm, peace, and tranquility. We avoided conflict, preferring to resolve disputes through diplomacy and logic. The idea that humans would intentionally seek out danger felt completely alien to me. Pun intended. Just as I was about to push the thoughts aside and focus on the upcoming semester, my comm device pinged. I glanced at the small holographic screen that flickered to life in the center of my desk. A message from an unknown sender. Interested in learning more about focus training? Meet us at the combat arena, level 14. My heart skipped a beat. I reread the message twice before showing it to Jax, whose eyes widened in surprise. Whoa, he muttered. Looks like they noticed you after all. Think you're going to take them up on it. The smart thing to do would have been to delete the message and pretend I never saw it. But there was something in me, a spark of curiosity, maybe, or perhaps just sheer stupidity, that made me hesitate. As dangerous and chaotic as the humans seemed, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something to be learned from them. Something primal. I'll go, I said before I could think better of it. I need to understand how they think. Why they do what they do. Jax blinked at me, his wings fluttering nervously. Well, if you come back missing a limb, at least I'll know not to sign up for any human activities. I shot him a look, but his teasing tone did little to ease my anxiety. My decision was made. Whether it was out of sheer curiosity or some misplaced sense of adventure, I was going to see what the humans had to offer. The combat arena on level 14 was a massive, industrial space designed for physical training. When I arrived, the walls seemed to hum with the energy of past battles, and I could feel a faint tremor beneath my feet, like the arena itself was alive with anticipation. The humans were already there, waiting for me. Lieutenant Drake was inspecting a sleek, dangerous-looking rifle while Logan was casually leaning against a bulkhead, tossing a small metallic sphere between his hands. Sarah, the female who had taunted me earlier, was stretching her arms above her head, her lithe form taut and coiled like a predator ready to pounce. Glad you showed up, Draxorian, Sarah said, her voice dripping with both amusement and challenge. We weren't sure you'd have the guts. I swallowed hard, trying to keep my voice steady. I'm here to learn. Drake stepped forward, slinging his rifle over his shoulder. His gaze was intense, his scarred face hardened by years of combat experience. Good. Then let's start with the basics. I followed them into the heart of the arena, where various training modules and equipment were laid out, some of it familiar, but most of it looked alien to me, clearly designed for species much hardier than my own. Drake wasted no time. Focus training is about more than just physical endurance, he explained, his deep voice reverberating through the empty space. It's about mental clarity, about maintaining control in the midst of chaos. Sarah smirked, her eyes gleaming. It's also about not dying. Keeps things interesting. I tried to keep up as they explained the intricacies of their methods. They described scenarios where they'd be submerged in water with limited air supply, forced to fight through simulated zero-gravity environments, and, most shockingly, training with live ammunition to heighten their senses. Drake pointed to a nearby console. We're going to start you off with something simple. A training exercise called Firewalk. Firewalk? I asked, the name alone sending a chill down my spine. Logan grinned. Think of it as a warm-up. The console beeped to life, and the arena floor shifted beneath my feet. Suddenly, the air grew hotter, and I realized with growing horror that the surface of the floor had begun to glow. It wasn't actual fire, but simulated heat, designed to make every step feel like I was walking across molten rock. Stay focused, Drake advised, his voice cool and collected. This is where you learn to control your instincts. Panic and you fail. Focus and you succeed. Sarah motioned toward a path that had appeared in the middle of the glowing arena. Think you can handle it, Draxorian? I didn't have a choice. The only way forward was through the fire. With every step, the heat intensified. My skin prickled, and I could feel sweat trickling down the back of my neck. The humans watched me closely, their expressions unreadable. My mind raced, trying to block out the sensation of burning beneath my feet, but it was no use. The heat was too real, too overwhelming. I faltered, nearly losing my balance. Don't stop. Logan barked from behind me. If you stop now, you'll never make it through. I grit my teeth and forced myself to keep moving. My vision blurred from the intensity, but I pushed through, one agonizing step at a time. The end of the path seemed impossibly far away, but I kept my focus, remembering what Drake had said. Focus. Control. And then, finally, I stepped off the heated surface and collapsed onto the cool metal floor. My breath came in ragged gasps, my body shaking from the effort. Drake crouched beside me, his expression surprisingly approving. Not bad. For your first time. Sarah leaned down, her smirk returning. You survived, Draxorian. That's more than most can say after their first firewalk. I looked up at them, still trying to catch my breath. This is insane. How do you do this regularly? Drake's smile was grim. It's not about wanting to do it. It's about needing to. If you don't learn to control your fear, it'll control you. And in that moment, I understood. For these humans, survival wasn't just a challenge, it was a way of life.